Brought to you by the EveryDollar app. Start budgeting for free today.
I think there's one singular issue that the Ramsey show needs to be addressing. I think there's one singular issue that Americans on the left, Americans on the right, Americans in the middle, all parties, all faiths, all creeds, I think this one issue should be the dominant issue in this election. And George, I'm sad, and I am a bit worried that it's not. And so we're going to unpack it today.
What a tease. Can I just say, that was...
Well, let me tell you something. It is a growing problem, and it is growing by the second. The issue that I believe that the American people should unite on is the national debt. Here we are at Ramsey Solutions, where for decades we have helped people get out of debt. And we talk about it through Scripture. We talk about it through Grandma's common sense ways. We talk about it through the baby steps. And it is such a freeing thing for individuals when we talk to them, George, across the studio and into the lobby on the debt-free stage, and we hear their stories, and they culminate their story of getting out of debt by screaming, "I'm debt-free." And we talk to people and say, what does it feel like? And it just is such an unbelievable part of our show. So we must discuss the national debt. And we have a massive audience. And so I'm asking this audience to hang with us for a few minutes here as I discuss the national debt and actually why it should be bothering you. Because there are 5 specific outcomes that would affect you and me and George if we were to default on the national debt.
Which we've come dangerously close to, by the way. This is not like a thing that, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
We've been on the precipice multiple times.
We have. And we've also seen the national debt explode. I asked the team, as we speak, the national debt is growing. So they're going to throw it on the screen for our listening audience.
National debt calculator.
We are right now, George, at $34,960 billion in debt, and it continues to go up. They're literally, if you're watching right now, you can see it on the screen. If you're listening, this is out there. They have this at bus stops in Washington, D.C., by the way, where it's literally going and it's a ticker.
This is like the opposite of Xanax. This is very anxiety-inducing.
Yeah, so
to see those numbers grow at that alarming rate.
We are just...
And we owe money to a lot of people.
100%. So,
which puts us in a precarious position.
Right. So before I break down the 5 factors, the 5 ways this will affect you, I want you to understand something. The reason that we, the people, you, me, George, we just don't pay attention to this is because we somehow think the federal government's got this ultimate insurance policy, or that they're all going to come together at the last moment of crisis and figure it out. But folks, if you pay attention to the headlines, year in and year out, we see Congress deal with what we call raising the debt ceiling. They aren't doing anything about it.
It's like raising your credit card limit every year because you can't get your spending under control.
So here we are on the doorstep of $35 trillion. Now, some of you think, this is not an issue, Ken. You're being a little dramatic because it's the Ramsey show. No, I'm not. Here we go. 5 very personal outcomes if the American people don't do something, say something, and I'm going to tell you at the end, by the way, what we can do. There is a very practical way to deal with this. But first, how would it affect you? George, number 1, interest rates would spike through the roof. The reason for this is because investors, countries that have loaned us money, effectively investing in the American economy, would demand higher returns because of the risk, because of the default.
So the cost to borrow goes way up.
For everybody and everything. You think interest rates are uncomfortable now? We're talking about double-digit interest rates overnight.
So credit card interest rates, mortgage interest rates, student loan interest rates, car loans, everything.
Number 2, the stock market would probably experience a significant volatility. Think, am I saying crash? Can't guarantee this. Massive decline in the stock market. What does that mean to you? Tell them, George. What does that mean to them?
Well, when people get spooked, including the big-time investors, they sell off their equities. And when they sell it off, the stock price goes down.
But how does it affect the average American person?
Well, you look at your 401k, and we all remember,
that's
the
your
2008
retirement
crisis or whatever. We saw this just a few years ago.
That's right.
My retirement just got cut in half because of what just happened with the market.
All right. Number 3, you think inflation has been bad over the last couple of years. If we default on the national debt, inflation skyrockets. Everything skyrockets. It's nasty. It's ugly. You're talking about Depression era issues. Really, really ugly. Really, really scary. Number 4, government services. A default could force the government to cut spending. Some of you go, it's about time. Until you think of the social unrest of government entitlements and government programs being slashed,
Social Security,
and not being able to be delivered. That's exactly right. So you just think about that. And then the 5th factor is unemployment. Now you're talking about Depression era stuff where literally people could not get jobs. There were not jobs to be had. So am I painting a bleak picture? Sure. But it is a picture that must be painted for us to understand that while we here at the Ramsey Show are saying, hey, control what you can control and get rid of your debt, let me just tell you something. George and I are debt-free, and we would be affected dramatically by our government defaulting on its debt. We are racing towards $40 and $50 trillion of debt, folks, and all it takes is one major country who we have a lot of debt with to call the debt in. And the very story that draws people to Dave Ramsey could happen to this country. This is not a joke. So why do I bring it up? Because we have a massive audience and we have a massive responsibility. In this election year, George, I am proposing that the issue that the American people get behind is removing the national debt, eliminating the debt, and going a step further. So how do we do this? George asked me, he says, so what do we do? Well, many states in the country have in their state constitution a requirement for a balanced budget. So I grew up in Virginia. That is one state where in the actual constitution of the state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, you have to balance the budget.
AKA you can't spend more than you're making as a state.
This ticker the team just put up here where we're barreling towards $35 trillion can't happen. And so how would we do this? If we, the people, to Congress, to our senators, demanded a balanced budget amendment, because it would take that kind of support. The American people would have to be in absolute unity in massive numbers. And then you can get an amendment to the Constitution. I won't do a whole discourse on how to do that.
So we need like a national rice and beans type diet here. We spend less than we make, which we joke about Congress, spending like crazy, writing new bills.
That's right. I think we, the people, need to say, you know what? Instead of fighting over social issues and fighting over, insults and accusations, we ought to go, you know what? The thing that threatens us the most is the actual national debt. And we need an amendment to the Constitution.
Well, for people can go, and you guys, this is far more complicated than you're giving credit to. It really is this simple. We are spending more than we're taking in.
It's that simple.
That's how we got here.
I could take Mr. Camel to Washington, and I could have George in a room.
Get me on the floor,
with
Ken.
all of the bean counters in the federal government, and George could actually balance the budget. I know you could. We could take every dollar and hand it over to our bureaucrats. I think every dollar would
break if we put $35 trillion into our debt category.
So there it is, folks. I bring this up because I think we should be paying attention to this. A balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution would, in fact, force the politicians to get our country debt-free. That would let us all sleep well at night.
Create your free every dollar budget today, the simplest way to budget for your life.